I got to tour with you, Shonda. When was that? Probably 2000, and it was
Uh,
after 2000, right?
maybe it
Yeah.
was 2000. It was a long time ago. Was
Yeah.
it for him? Wait, what, four eyed, something on a fruitcake? Four
Yeah.
guys and a
Four guys
fruit.
on a fruitcake. Yep, that's
That's what
right.
it was. And you were the fruitcake. Oh, no, it is. It was really good. We had the same manager
Uh-huh, that's right. Mike
time.
Atkins.
So
Uh-huh.
everybody was trying to figure out new and innovative ways to keep working in the winter, and let's face it, winter months are so hard for artists anyway to
Right.
find venues and all of that because
Hmm.
churches are very, very busy and they're as they should be in all
Right.
their Christmas stuff. So it's hard to so you have to come up with some unique thing. I don't know about you, but I don't know for him now. You guys have been retired a while,
Oh,
right?
retired. That makes us sound old.
Well,
Thanks a
I
lot
mean,
for
like,
that. But
yeah,
yeah, we took a hiatus. Let's put it that way.
there you go. Yeah.
Yeah, we still do this one there's we have one standing concert we do every year. We've been a part of a
Really?
yeah, of a golf pro-am down in Central Florida,
Well, of course you would be.
and we're going to back again this March, and it'll be our 31st year of doing
Wow.
that. Yeah,
That
so
is
yeah, if
so
you want to
good.
come if you want to see For Him, then you got to buy into the
That's where you
tournament.
gotta get.
And
See, I want to find gigs like that where if you want to see me, that's where you gotta come because
yeah.
I'm parking that bus.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. Well, I will say, there's a little heat on For Him right now. We've been getting some offers for quite a few concerts. You know where For Him is really big right now is in the
Where?
Southern gospel world.
Well, yeah, because the genres of music always evolve. You know what I'm saying? And if you would listen to the old Southern gospel that I grew up on, it's now you listen to it now, and it's nothing like that. It's the same thing, what they say about a contemporary Christian music. Oh, my
Yeah.
mother thought it was just almost of the devil,
Well,
and there
some
was
of it
nothing
probably was.
yeah, and there was nothing but Southern gospel. If you don't sing Southern gospel, you're going to hell. Well, then that's changed so much. If she could hear some of Southern gospel right now, she'd probably flip in her grave. So I could
Well,
see how For Him would become big, surge in because it that music has evolved into new things
it
as well.
has. Yeah. It's interesting because I have some friends who are in the world of producing and writing for Southern gospel, and
Yeah.
they say they'll be in the studio and they'll be in the studio with these Southern gospel artists, and they're like, we can you write us something like what you wrote for Him, or can you help us get
Yes.
that For Him sound? So it's really interesting. I'm looking forward
Yeah.
to some of these dates we're going to be doing with, in
It,
these Southern gospel arenas where, I mean, that's really what that's what we were raised on, and that's where our sound, kind of
came
evolved from.
started.
Yeah.
Well,
Hmm.
you had four guys. You had a quartet, and I grew up on quartet music, but you guys didn't sound like a quartet. Now I don't know how that was possible. Was it just because the rhythm of the music or the contemporary style
It
of
was
the
our
song?
influences. Yeah.
Yeah,
So yeah,
yeah. I
obviously,
wondered about that.
yeah. So yeah, at our age, we all grew up on Southern gospel and all that kind of stuff, but we also grew up on the Eagles and the
Oh
Bee
yeah,
Gees and Journey and all those big pop vocal groups, of
love it.
the 70s and 80s. And so that was kind of where we pushed our sound, but everything has its root in the country gospel, that kind of stuff.
Everything.
Okay,
Yeah.
we're talking about For Him. This is not a For Him podcast. It's a Chonda Pierce podcast. So I'm so grateful to reconnect with you after all these years. So welcome to the One Degree of Andy podcast,
Thank you.
my
Thank
friend
you.
Chonda Pierce. Yeah,
Woo! The thousands are clapping.
yes, they are.
I too have my influences
Uh-huh.
as a comedian, and I was, it's funny that we talk about For Him and the influences and what's Southern gospel music, what's quartet, what's contemporary. As an artist, in what I do, I've had a hard time sticking to a niche. Nobody knew what to do with me for so long of my career.
Yeah.
I was always because when I first started comedians, I was my first kind of Christian gig was on a bus with JD Sumner's and the Stamps.
Oh, wow.
Green, totally green, at what I do. Now I'd worked in country comedy, for a little bit, but it was my first time to kind of really go out. And of course, Mama thought that was wonderful. I was with, the stamps. But I was terrified, you know what I mean? Because I'd heard horrible things about buses, from the country music side. I'm
Oh
like,
yeah.
probably gonna smoke pot and try to, grab me. And it was just, and they all slept the whole way to Gatlinburg. You know what I mean? It was
Yeah.
like, it was so boring drive,
It's true.
because
That's
they were
true.
even old then.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, that's the
But
life. People think that, look, you get into rock music and some of the other stuff, it can be pretty crazy. But for the most part, the bus life it's just sort
boring.
of, it's boring survival.
Yes,
It's,
it
it's like,
is.
I just want to get some sleep and wake up for the next show if that's possible.
That's one of my most fond memories of being on the bus with you guys. And I'd not been on the bus with you before, and it was odd, here I am, this girl, and for him, and of course there was a tour manager and people
Uh-huh.
like that. Two things stick out about that tour. I don't know if you remember. One, and I teased him on stage. He didn't think I would say it, but I did. I woke up in the morning hearing cupboard doors just slam, aggravated, and Mark was so mad because he couldn't find any cereal. And I don't know why it struck me so funny, because he was like, all I asked for is some frosted flakes or whatever it was. He was just
Oh, I know what it
slapping.
was. I know what it was.
Yeah,
It was Reese's peanut butter crunch.
yes. And
Yes.
he couldn't find it. And I couldn't wait to get on stage that night and go, let me tell you about these very spiritual men. You know, Mr. Diva Mark could not find his cereal this morning. It was so funny.
Oh my gosh.
That, and then I remember we were loading in somewhere, and a tour manager was counting the merchandise, and I don't want this to sound all like we're all, businessy, but it's what we do for a living. And he
Hmm.
was counting the money and getting it ready for a deposit, and so we could all get paid and all that stuff. And he stepped aside or something, and he didn't realize the people loading in was the local prison ministry, and they helped unload the merchandise and the lights and the sound and all that stuff, which was really nice of them. But you also are sitting there with a wad of cash, and he puts it in a briefcase, and he sets the briefcase down where they've all been walking back and forth to watch it, and it was gone.
Yep. Oh, I
Ah,
remember that like it was yesterday.
yeah, and then we were like, oh, so we're not getting paid this week,
Yeah.
okay? I guess.
Oh, Stephen Weaver was his name. Stephen, if you're
Yes,
listening,
yes.
yes. And
I
Stephen
think
felt so bad, and we were pretty angry with you, Stephen, because
yes.
that's something you just don't do.
And you have
And
families, that's
yeah,
what people don't realize. There's a sector of the Christian market that wants to think we're all out here doing our devotions and bringing, the word of God to you every night and all that. They forget that there is a business side of it, that this is how we make a living. This
right.
is what keeps the lights on.
Hmm.
This is, and it happens to be in a business where we get to talk about Jesus and we get to hang
Right.
out with Jesus people, but it is the way we make a living. And
Yeah.
that was frightening. It was,
Yeah.
we were all
And
like,
and and
oh boy.
this is one of the reasons you hold a very special place in my heart, Shonda, for very seriously, was because we didn't carry tour insurance. I didn't
Yeah,
know there was such a thing, but you did.
yeah,
And you came through and used your tour insurance to cover the losses
right,
from that merge, because I mean they weren't, some of them were checks and some credit card
right.
statements, but it was mostly cash, thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars
Dollars.
in
Yeah.
cash. And that was, to me, I just remember thinking that that's a really beautiful thing to do, because not
Well,
only did you cover your losses, you covered our losses. And look, we've all been around the entertainment industry for a long time, and there's a lot of what's mine is mine, and
yes.
uh, you
Good luck
know,
to you.
yeah,
Yeah,
good luck to you. Yeah, I hope you make it. And
yeah,
you showed a different side to me there that I didn't see a ton in the business. Not to say that terrible stuff went on, but
right.
that was just one of the kindest things that anyone ever did for us
Oh, well, I
back in
just want
those
to
days.
say, now that you remember that, and I'm on my way down, I need some money. No, just,
Let me see what I can do.
this is so funny. I used to get so frustrated. My friend Mark Lowry, and I used to watch his life and go, how come I'm not doing so well as well financially. And I'm
Mm.
trying to be a good steward, and I'm selling just as many tickets. And I don't understand until one time Mike Atkins explained to me, well, he wrote Mary, Did You Know? So,
Yeah, exactly.
oh, okay. I should work on writing like a really famous Christmas song.
Yeah, most people
Yeah.
don't realize that that song was written by him and
Buddy Green.
Buddy Green. Yes, Buddy Green.
I
And that
love Buddy Green.
song, I'm telling you,
Yeah.
Mark Harris is stepping into it now because "Strange Way to Save the World" is getting re-recorded. It's like it's been discovered after
Again.
all of these years. We
And
recorded back
rightfully
in '93.
so.
Yeah,
Yes,
Rascal
rightfully so.
Flats.
What a
Yeah.
great song. It's
Yeah,
a
Rascal
great song.
Flatts picked it up, and there have been several other country artists that have done it, and a bunch of
Yeah,
Christian artists that have redone it. But
yeah,
yeah, the old saying in Nashville is if you can write a great Christmas song,
you'll be
you,
okay.
yeah, you'll
Yeah,
feed your children, grandchildren, and great
yeah.
grandchildren, so they never go away. Well,
Although, do you guys take a hit? Because I feel that way sometimes. I, I'm just noticing what's in my background. You get all the bling on the wall, and
uh-huh. Oh, I got it back here. Yeah, you see mine.
I know I've got accolades, but when the internet really took off, it
Mhm.
really began the royalty checks and all that began to get skinnier and skinnier
Mhm.
because people weren't they were playing illegally, doing
Right.
the music illegally, playing stuff illegally, and it was so easy to download it and to steal it, and people never thought that that was stealing. I remember I came into my mother's house one time and she said, I'm just so tired. I spent all day recording the Gaither videos because they were doing a Gaither marathon on TBN and she was recording every show. And I said, Mom, that's rather illegal. No, it's Jesus music. That's illegal in Jesus music. So I think it was Dennis Swanberg or somebody call
Yeah.
her doing Billy Gaither's voice
Oh
and telling
no.
her to please do not record anymore. And would you
Oh my
send us a
gosh.
check for $45? Oh my gosh. She just for months, she would go, that was just so I didn't know he was such a selfish man.
Did you ever tell her?
I finally did like months later.
We used to pull stuff like that on my mother-in-law all the time. She
Oh
was,
my gosh.
bless her heart, she was so gullible, and I would call her every April Fool's Day with some different voice or say that I
Yeah.
was, somebody, impersonate somebody, and just have her, you know, I got her every time.
Oh. Do you
Uh,
love it? Is she still living?
no, she passed away back in 2005.
Yeah, my
Mm.
mother's passed too, but I will say one of the sweetest accolades you can have in your life is someone that is so important to you. Was my mother. She was a lot of my material, to tell you the truth. That she absolutely was so proud of me
Hmm.
and loved what I do. She was always a little more worried about me being successful than she was me failing.
Interesting.
Yeah, and she was really, when I started getting a few gold records here and there and platinum records, and you start hanging them on the wall, she didn't like that. She just thought you're going to think too much of yourself that you. And I used to have them in a closet for a long time,
Yeah,
and
I get
it was,
that.
yeah, it was a
Hmm.
pastor friend and a wonderful therapist who said
Yeah,
that stuff out and hang it up. Look what the Lord's blessed you with,
yeah.
and
I think there's
I
two sides to
respect
that because I've done that as well. When I got off the road and got into full time worship ministry for a long
yeah,
time, I was like, I don't want to hang my hat on what I did. I want to start a new chapter, and I don't want to look like. I mean, if I were to do a panorama of my office here, all the walls
yeah,
are filled with all the stuff over 40 years that you know
yeah,
that that we've been able to accomplish. But I did the same thing. I put it in a closet, didn't
yep.
take it out until one day. So I got to tell you a little funny story, and I've shared this on the podcast maybe a couple of times, but I got to share this again with Michael Omardian,
Oh,
who the story
I
comes
love
from.
it. Yeah,
We were recording our hymns record back in the late '90s, and he and I were in the studio late one night, just by ourselves, doing coming up with some background vocals. And I had this big idea for a background line. Well, he disagreed, and I was just like, oh, but see, I really think I can hear it in my head. I think it
yeah,
should go like this. And he says, well, I hear it in my head too, and it should go like this. Went
yeah,
back and forth, maybe for 5 minutes, and finally he said, hey, Chrisman, tell you what, you walk down that hallway, go get you a cup of coffee, and when you come back, tell me what you see and tell me who you think has a better idea. And I knew what he meant was
yeah,
because down that hallway, was about
Oh, yes.
100 feet of platinum records, floor to
Yes.
ceiling. And what he
Yes.
was telling me was,
From giant names.
trust
Yeah.
me, I know what I'm doing. And that has stuck with me. And so I got to a certain part of my career where I went, I have accomplished a lot.
Yeah.
I am good at this. And people
Yeah.
need, not only do people need to know that about me, I need to remind myself. So these things are for me.
That's
They're not
true.
for anybody else. They're for me to look and anytime I get discouraged or just think, am I really good at this? I go, wait a minute. Yeah, the
Yes.
things on my wall
Something
remind
worked.
me.
Right.
Yeah, it's
Well,
legacy. It's
for
legacy
me
stuff.
too, it is as a woman, it is there was too many days away from home.
Hmm.
But um but at least the reward of it was not the accolades, but the reward was that your hard work was noticed. And then it also gives your kids something to go, well, way to go, mom. You did really good. It wasn't just you weren't running from us. You
Yeah.
just were really working hard. Yeah. Although
Yeah.
some days I probably was. They were teenagers at one point. That's
There was
right.
there was a time, and as a dad, if the kids were being a little difficult at home, there's part of that, leaving the door to go jump on a
Bye,
flag, like,
bye.
see you in a couple days.
That's the truth. That's the
So
truth.
I want to go back to just kind of the beginning of your career. We had the honor of touring with several comedians during our career on the road, and it really wasn't until we toured with you that
Uh-uh.
we were with someone that was at a different level. Like you could tell there was a lot more happening in front of you than any of the other comedians. And again, I would call these guys and talk to them, and they would agree. There was something special about where you were going. Do you remember a time when you felt like, yeah, I think I've got something here that maybe I can take to another level? And uh,
Yeah.
do you remember when that was for you?
I Well, it's so funny. I get choked up when you talk about it because, I am at that part of my career where you are evaluating how far you've come.
Uh-huh.
And so it's always for me, it's always, so what's next? So what's next? In a comedian's world, like I'm not a songwriter. So, um, if I don't work, I don't get paid. And so you have to figure out how to save and how to put aside so you can find those twilight years and enjoy life, in the
Yeah.
nursing home. But because that's what's next. But for me, I try to evaluate what I did and how I got here. And for me, down through the years, I've had probably 5 managers in my whole 35-year career. Maybe not even that many. But I believe when Mike Atkins came along, it was a shot in the arm for me because one, he managed people I admired, and he's a smart man, so he would not be interested in me if I didn't have a future, and I knew that.
Hmm.
And so that made me feel like, okay, yeah, it's not that I felt like I arrived. I just felt like somebody believed in what it was that I was doing and wasn't and never ever ever tried to change what it is that I do. Now, down through the years, I've had people suggest this and that. Why do you always have to have the serious thing at the end? Or, why don't you just, why aren't you doing more comedy festivals and stuff, that's about comedy? And I go, because I'm not just a comedian. I've never been. I've always used comedy was always the opening act for something I wanted to leave the crowd. And nobody else did it that way. Not to the extent probably that I do. I have always every video I've ever recorded, every concert I've ever done, every tour theme that ever came along always started with the funny, and then that thesis kind of worked its way through so that at the end I could leave this nugget that the Lord had taught me or gotten me through, and I could leave it with my crowd. And that's always been my MO. And at the same time, here I am at the twilight of my career when you would think someone who got awarded the most awarded female comic in history would have no problem with getting a Netflix special. No way, because so much of my projects and everything that I do leans to Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that is at a place where now, especially in mainstream, because of my material. You know, it's not just a 5 minute song. I'll have stories and material, and that evolves into what's current events and what's going on. And so if you side one way, if you live a conservative life, if you talk a whole lot about Jesus, that is penalized in most of mainstream. And so that's kind of always been the rub for me and the aggravation for me. I am, I go to the Dove Awards and I love it, and I love watching. I've hosted it before, and I love people getting pats on the back. But for many many years, they didn't even have any type of award for spoken word.
No, they didn't.
Now they've evolved. They've got Dove Awards for film, and everything like that. But so there was really not a category for what it is that I do. So there was no really, getting left out feeling. I never had that. I was just so happy to meet. I got as many pictures and autographs as anybody else backstage, because I'm just a big fan of Christian music,
Yeah.
period. I love it. But for me, on my side of what I do, there's a vast world of comedy that I am completely left out of. But what's so sweet, it's like you were saying, when somebody mentions your name or when you see that stuff on the wall, maybe that's the reminder for me on the wall, is to say, you did it your way and you did it with Jesus in mind, and you still got blessed.
Yeah, and how many
Yeah,
people have you been able to speak into their lives? I mean,
you're right.
again,
Right.
where you come from, and, I'd like to get into this part of your story here in just a minute, but, what you've been through, your position, as a woman in comedy, which is,
Right.
in the minority, especially on the Christian side.
I
And
did, yeah, you're right.
yeah, yeah,
On
where
all
you,
sides, really, a female comic. And the sad thing, in mainstream, female comics are usually the most dirty.
yeah, they
And
are.
they're feeling like they're in competition, I think, with men.
Hmm.
This is not an endorsement, but I am such a fan of comedy. I like to know, who's doing what. And I think one of the greatest comics out there, if you have to edit out all of his words, is Dave Chappelle.
Oh
I
yeah,
think he's absolutely hilarious. They call him the GOAT, greatest of all
yeah,
time. But what's so interesting, his latest Netflix special is called Dreamer. And I zip through some of the dirty language here and there because he's not a believer. So don't
right,
expect him to talk about
right.
Jesus. Yeah. So anyway, he told a story at the end that would leave you crying.
Hmm.
It was so poignant and so precious, about keeping your dream alive. And I was like, what if he ever run across my videos and they thought, we should start doing that. We should start leaving a message. It feels so good.
That's an interesting thing that one of the theories that I have is that if you have a musical gift, that it's a
Yeah,
gift from God, whether you use it for
for
him
him or
or
not. Right.
or not. Yeah. So I hear a Elton John song and I go, that guy's
Yes.
anointed. That's an
Yeah.
anointed gift that he has. Gives me chills. It makes it wakens something in me
Right.
musically where I go, that's beautiful art.
That came from the creator.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
if you look through, the first person that I can find in the Old Testament where God gave His Spirit to, other than Moses or one of the other patriarchs, was
Big name. Yeah.
Bezalel. Who was an iron worker and made things for the temple. He was an artist. He gave His Spirit
Wow,
to an
that's
artist,
great.
and I have
And he didn't have a big name. The
no,
big names
that's
like
right,
Abraham and Moses. You'd have to really
exactly.
look for him. Yeah.
Yeah, he's not mentioned again throughout the scriptures like the other patriarchs are. But I have some friends here in Tulsa that I'm really close to that are comedians and make their living as comedians. And I've come to understand that their gift is a spiritual gift, the
Yeah.
gift of making people laugh, the making, to give people joy. And so,
Hmm.
somebody like Dave Chappelle, I believe, has a natural gift from God
Yes.
to make people laugh, to tell a
Yeah.
story, to make you to open your mind and make you wonder about things.
And
I
see things
yeah,
and don't take things so seriously.
yeah,
I feel that way. When I run across, somebody like that, or I meet someone, I begin to put them on my prayer list because I
mhm,
think this person who's been given this gift from the creator, oh, how I wish he knew the creator.
yeah,
oh, wouldn't it be great if they knew each other?
Yeah.
God obviously knows him and says, I'm gonna put this in him. He's gonna make my kids laugh, 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 laugh. And someday I hope he knows him. Now he's Muslim, I believe, and so
Mhm.
he knows Muhammad better than I guess he knows Jesus, but that can always
That's
change.
right. There's a great revival going on right now with Muslims.
Even among Hollywood for
Mhm.
sure,
That's right.
absolutely.
That's
I
right.
have a Jewish manager now. He's been my manager for 15 years, and great man. And we tease each other all the time. I'm always saying, this verse came from my half of the Bible, and then I'll I'll share it to him. And I took him to Israel, and for his first time,
Oh,
he
wow.
went, yeah, and it was just really, had meaningful things like that. But I would not be able to influence him had like the Mike Atkins that came along. I was with Mike for till he retired the first time, and so uh,
Mike.
that relationship built, and he built my career in such a way that this Andrew Tenenbaum was interested,
Mhm.
um, or he wouldn't have been if there was nothing for him to wait. He wouldn't waste his time, and he managed Robin Williams and Billy Crystal, and
Wow.
and still manages some incredible people. Um, Now takes care of Robin's estate, which is sad. But
Mm.
all that to say, if had I not accomplished something, I would not have gotten his attention. And in the getting of his attention, it could be that he is not going to take me to some next level or whatever. And I think I've really done well. If I retired tomorrow, I feel fine about myself. It may not be that he's going to take me to the next level, but what you said, I and what I do and my market is beginning to have such an influence on him.
Mm.
When he comes to the shows and he sees the spiritual side of it, and we're praising God, and I heard him say out of his mouth the other day something about third day, and then something about these are the names he wouldn't even know
No,
these
if it
people.
wasn't for
Yeah,
you. Yeah.
no, and he wouldn't even know that this worship music exists. And
Yeah.
talk about how they're so casting crowns. That group is really selling tickets, and Mercy Me, and it's like, and I love that. But because of that, he'll do his research, and it could be he'll stumble on a song, or there'll be a verse, or there'll be a phrase that finally catches his eye, and he begins to think more about Jesus. And
Mhm.
so that's what people don't realize. It's all connected. I'm getting ready to leave for New York next week to do Sherry Shepherd's new show.
Oh, nice.
She and I have remained friends for many, many years. And of course, she, hosted The View, and she's gone on to do movies. And she doesn't work as much. She doesn't work hardly at all in the Christian market, but she's a great comic. And when I go into a comedy club with her, I am always shocked at the people that will know who I am. The
Huh.
comics pay attention.
Interesting.
The gatekeepers may not so much. I remember walking the first time I saw Sinbad, and he threw his arms around me and said, "Girl, you are killing it." You know what I mean? And it's like, oh wow,
Uh, I think
people that
that's the same thing with like musicians. I mean, musicians
yeah,
know other musicians. And
yes, that's exactly
I
right.
run across musicians that are playing for some of the biggest names in country and pop music. And when they hear my name and who I'm associated with, they're, oh my gosh, oh yeah, like totally know who you
Yeah,
guys are.
man, your
Totally
voice
grew up
was
like, oh yeah.
I know. It's so
Hmm.
good. It's so good. The whole art world is smaller than what you think.
Yeah, you're right.
All of comedy, all of music, it's a smaller, unique what you think. And my thing is, every good and perfect thing comes from the Father. I believe that. And so if it's a song that, like you said, it could be Elton John song, but it brightened your day, it made you think about something, it may have convicted you, and it wasn't even a Christian artist. God uses everything, and he says, and if you don't use them, the rocks will cry out.
Mm,
The rocks will even care about me or be creative in how they tell others about me. And so finding that creative hook and that creative niche to lure people in is basically what we do. And you pray that the bait worked and that they bite it, and then they fall in love with Jesus. That's all we
wow.
do.
I
Yeah.
love it. I love it. Can we talk about David for a second? Because I
Yes.
think, I remember touring with you back in the early 2000s, and David
Yes.
was around and just fell in love with him, and just
Such a
what a
good man.
wonderful, wonderful man. And then it wasn't long after that,
Yeah.
was it, that you lost him?
Yeah. In 2014, he
Okay.
passed. we we were going through probably one of the most difficult times of our life and of our marriage. And that's the saddest part of it, is not losing him, of course, was horrible, but that his last few days, last few years on the earth, but maybe that was good. Maybe I saw he was so miserable that losing him to heaven was like,
Mm.
"Phew, he made it. Okay, he made it. Now I just got to
Wow.
work on me. I got to, now let's see that Zach makes it. It's
Yeah.
that kind of a thing." But he was a great man, loved golfing. As you know, he was a
Mm-hmm.
great,
Oh
a
yeah.
great golfer, a good writer. He was a novelist. He wrote several books, in his life. But and he was great. We were married 31 years,
Wow.
and he
What a
was my
legacy.
high school sweetheart. Yeah, he
Mm.
was just absolutely wonderful. I don't date. Well, I occasionally get asked for dinner, and that's really nice. I'm really mad at the Golden Bachelor on television.
I can't stand that stuff, honestly.
Me neither.
It's so weird.
But I didn't watch any of it till the very last one because I figured you can watch it and catch up with all of
Yeah.
the whole year. But I watched the very last. I mean, he even when he give people a rose, it was a gold rose. I mean, it's like so emphasized you're over the hill kind of a thing. Then they wound up getting married on national television. This beautiful wedding, January the 4th. I didn't even watch it. I was so bitter. These I run into these I've been widowed since 2014, Andy. I know people that were widowed, and 6 months later they got married. I'm like, what am I doing wrong? It's just so funny. I think part of it probably is my job.
Hmm.
You know, no man wants to get hooked up with me because he's going to be material next
They're
week.
terrified.
Yes, exactly right. That, and there is this thing about successful women that, I don't need a man. I would like to have one, but I don't need one.
Yeah.
And men at my age don't know
Mhm.
how to not be needed. And so
Yeah.
it's really funny. But somebody asked me the other day, "Oh, are you just still so in love with David? Is that why you don't date?" And I go, "No, I love him dearly, but my phone doesn't ring. That's why I don't date."
You're
It's
incredible.
so sad.
Uh,
When you start looking at the security man holding the back of the door when you come in with the bus, and he's like, he's not so bad looking. Maybe he's the only way I can meet someone.
I think I think one of the greatest gifts. I think what makes comedy work, if you know, obviously you know how to make it work, is how you tell the truth. I mean, when you expose the
Yeah.
truth about what life is, and
Yes.
and just how absurd so much of
Yes.
what life is. I think
Yes.
that's what makes.
It's really interesting. And watching that in David, that's a really good point because when he began to lose his sense of humor,
Hmm,
that's when the darkness really crept in. And he
wow.
was he was so much funnier than I am. He's quick-witted and really dry sense of humor. And he would whisper things to me that were so funny, and I would use them because they were so funny. And he was a great writer for me. And he
Yeah.
used to say his job was to keep doing stupid stuff so I would have a career. And he was so good at it. But it's funny how when you know that that darkness is seeping in too much when you've lost your total ability to laugh at a situation that should normally be funny.
Hmm,
And we had a very kind of tragic thing happen in our home. One of our children is wayward, and I mean, like, I don't know, I don't even know if she's wayward spiritually. I don't think she is. I pray not. But she just left did not want anything to do with my side of the family or anybody in our family for that matter. And it devastated him. And it's been 12 years and it's still that way.
hmm. I'm so sorry.
But yeah, it's very, very difficult. And and when she had children and he still was not allowed to be a grandfather, it devastated him. And nothing was funny to him anymore. He
Hmm.
couldn't find, and there's nothing funny about that, but I had to make a living still looking for funny and
Yeah.
expressing it to others. And so I think that helped. I tell people all the time, you rehearse in the dark what you learned in the light.
Hmm.
And I was blessed to grow up where I learned a lot in the light. He did not grow up that way, and he grew up in a home of alcohol. alcoholism. And so that's what was deep down inside of him. So when it got dark on this earth, he didn't have a base like I had. It doesn't mean I was better than him. It's just that's how important it is to raise your children in a correct manner, because life will be hard. And so what will they have in their arsenal? What will be the foundation of who they are that they lean to? And he began to lean on alcohol, and it
Mm,
killed him. Yeah.
mm. What was that like after David passed and life as a comedian and still having to
Yeah.
get out on the road and
It
do,
wasn't funny.
just yeah,
It
that to me
wasn't.
that's I'm
It was
interested in
hard.
that. Yeah.
It was very interesting. Now, I didn't go right back to work. That would have, then a
Sure.
therapist would have come
Yeah.
along and said,
Yeah.
something's
Yeah.
not right.
Yeah.
I tell crowds this all the time, audiences. I say, your body will deal with your stuff whether you cooperate or not.
Mm.
So if you're here tonight and you have laughed and you're just having the best time of your life, and your husband died yesterday, we probably need to call the FBI. Now, if you're here and you have a hard time laughing, and he died yesterday, and you can't seem to, your body's doing exactly as it's supposed to do. You're grieving. But if you're here having a wonderful time and he died an hour ago, there's a problem. So you have to give yourself time, and I had to
Sure.
give myself time. Yeah. We
Yeah.
were in the middle of, it was interesting because Andrew Tenenbaum, he was getting frustrated. We were new to each other's lives, and he would get frustrated that I sold a lot of tickets and he was doing so well, and he could not get me arrested in Hollywood. All
Hmm.
of his connections, and he thought he should be able to call the Tonight Show, and they would have, and Jimmy Kimmel would have me on tomorrow. And he couldn't get me arrested out there, and it was so frustrating to him. So he said, I want to do a little documentary, just a camera follow you around, how you got started, and then the behind the scenes, and then walking out into these massive crowds, and let's just capture some of this. And we started that, and in that process, we put the camera down and then wait for the next tour. And we just thought we'd take a couple of years of really putting a package together
Yeah.
so people would know who I am. Well, in the middle of that, my personal life began to fall apart.
Mm.
And so we happened to have so much on tape behind the scenes that was tearful moments of talking about home and worrying about David, and David talking about how we decided to just keep let's put this on film to see what we have. But he was really honest, talking about how he drank too much, and he got lost in the darkness, and we were so codependent on each other, and it was just really, it became very powerful. We called this documentary Laughing in the Dark, and it finally made it to the movie theaters after he had died, of course. And because we ended it really great, he had gotten out of rehab and was moved back home, and we were having a great resurgence of love and sex and everything was good. And he had a stroke, and just dropped
Mm.
dead. Well, since we had it, we waited a while, and then they released it. And I remember going to the movie theater with my son and sitting there watching it, and eating our popcorn. And I leaned over to him and said, my life sucks. And he's like, duh. My life has been filled. I finished writing a book. It's my last book I'll ever write, because when it comes out, no one will ever buy a ticket.
I
It's
can't wait
called
to read
Life.
it.
Yeah, life is funny until it isn't. And I just decided I've lived my life telling the ups and downs and giving God glory for, getting me through this. But I never really discussed my problem, my personal issues. And I thought, well, before I die, I'm going to be fair to David. I'm going to be fair to everybody and go, here's my stuff, here it all is. And so it's in a book now.
Wow.
It's all that to say, I run into comedians all the time, and they've all come from awful stuff. They're like, horrible life. Robin Williams had the saddest life. You
Yeah.
never knew the love of a father. You never knew. You run into people that struggle. Sherry, my friend Sherry Shepherd, she grew up where all of a sudden her family decided to be Jehovah's Witness, and it was just so horrible for her. She talks about, everybody's been through stuff, and yet some of the people that's gone through the worst become comedians.
Yeah.
You know,
Is it a coping mechanism, do you think? Is it? You know,
I
I've
think it is. I do. I think it
yeah.
is at first. I think it really was for me.
Hmm.
I know that. Sometimes you see the style of certain comedians and it's angry and but
Hmm.
they're so funny and so sarcastic. But sometimes I want to throw my arms around them in the green room and go, okay, who hurt you?
Yeah.
You know, who what are you so mad at that we could talk about to smooth those edges a little bit? I think I think a lot of times I remember stories I used to tell early on 30 years ago that I never tell because I remember where my heart was telling it. And it really wasn't to get the laugh. It was hoping that so and so heard it. I used to tell this story about three little old ladies at church came up to behind me at the water fountain and said, "This here's one of our preacher's daughters. She's not very pretty." And I turned around and said, "No, but I'm real SMART." And the funny thing is, I used to tell that hoping that those women were still alive.
Oh wow.
That was just my way of just getting
Yeah.
back a little bit. And I didn't turn around and say I'm SMART. I wrote that. That was the punchline. And I wrote that part because I tried to smooth it out for those little old ladies. So people wouldn't think church people are mean. You know what I mean? And so,
But
in
they
other
are.
yes, they are. And so now I talk about them going, sometimes
Yeah.
church people are just
Yeah.
jerks, you know. And I don't tell that anymore because my heart has healed
Hmm.
from ever wanting them to hear it. And they're dead and gone probably. So it's funny how, yeah, you can use comedy to vent,
Uh-huh.
you you can use comedy to for a great release and relief,
Hmm.
but finally, when the table turned for me, and it was probably 10 years into my career to where comedy really became, I almost talk about it as I said it outside myself, when comedy really became a tool God was lending me.
Hmm.
That's when I fell in love with comedy and
Hmm.
the art of it and the pride of working hard and putting words together correctly. It's like when you put
Yeah.
songs together so beautifully and you toy with different words, what rhymes, what doesn't rhyme, you toy with different words you put together and then it comes out and then all of a sudden it hits the radio and it resonates with thousands and thousands of
Yeah.
people. It's exactly what it feels like to write a really great story or a joke,
Well, it's
and it
interesting. Yeah. So, with art, with music, and I feel like it's the same with comedy, is that you can use your art as a weapon, which so
Yes,
much of comedy
all of it.
is biting and satirical, and it can
Yes.
cut you and
Look
wound
what
you.
the
And I,
devil has done with
yeah.
music.
Oh,
I mean,
absolutely.
horrible. I mean, so
Yeah.
the devil is in the job of taking anything and everything and perverting it
Yeah.
from just art on the wall. I mean,
Yeah.
they've had pictures, people peeing,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
crucifixion, and that was hanging at the Met.
Yeah.
It's really, I mean, it's
It's
like
anger. Yeah.
the devil is in the job and he wins every now and then.
Mhm.
I mean, he won't win the final story, but he wins. Yeah.
But I love how you and I can never say his last name right. Nit Bargate
Nate Bargatze.
Bargatze, okay, and
Yes.
Tim Hawkins, and there
Yes.
there is a resurgence of the whole dry comedy bar thing.
Yes.
I think
Really
there
helped.
is,
I've
yeah,
never done one, but
there well, there's a,
never
you know,
invited me.
I feel like there is a kind of a redemption of that of comedy, and
Absolutely.
so that it's more positive now. We could still make us. Michael Jr. is one of those as
Yes.
well. That's
You know
just
what?
make.
Look at there are the people that came and that do clubs
Uh-huh.
and do Christian market and things like that. They're clean. They're just good, clean comics, and they're brilliant. Michael Jr. was on the Tonight Show like 6, 7 times, I think. It's
Yeah.
just really great. A lot of them don't never called themselves a Christian comedian.
Right.
Some of them they just call themselves a comedian. And Nate has asked me that before too. Why'd you do that? And I go, oh, I was just glad to not be going to hell. So I didn't know it was going to be a problem, down the road.
Yeah.
And he just laughed, when he was younger and he would pop in and, and to see some of us and all of that. And we are like, when I see him now that he is selling out arenas and
Hmm.
all, I get so excited for him because he's one of the good guys. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like,
Right.
wow. I mean, he's selling more tickets than Dave Chappelle.
That's incredible. I
Yeah.
love
I mean,
that too, and they're on Netflix, and so you can
oh, yeah.
actually have an option to go.
Yes.
As good as Dave Chappelle is, if I don't want to sit through all
Right.
of the just all the language and yeah,
I just
the
and
filthy stuff.
I can't stomach
Yeah,
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
After a
watch as
while,
much as an artist. I listen and watch to what I can, and then at some point I have to go. Okay,
yeah.
that's
Yeah,
hurting
we
my
always
heart.
had the
It's hurting my
3, yeah,
soul. I can't do
yeah.
that.
We had
But
3 strikes and we flip it.
yeah,
You know,
but
I
we want to
learned
learn from the best. We want to learn from people. So
absolutely. I think
but
that's one of the reasons I love Christian music.
hmm,
It always gave my kids an alternative. You know what I mean? Because there
yeah,
was stuff on the radio you didn't want them to hear, and they'd come home from school just to singing along with Eminem, and you're like, oh my goodness, what can we find an alternative? And you begin to introduce that into their lives, and then they do great. They had every Carmen rap, memorized. They had every, a for him song. Sorry, you're that old. And,
glad to be here.
DC Talk. My son loved DC Talk, and Skillet. They love Skillet. But those are the things you're so grateful as a parent that there are alternatives. The problem I feel is sad that parents aren't pursuing that enough.
Hmm,
They're not making sure their children are surrounded. I think we have put so much power into the hands of Satan that he really doesn't have.
yep.
But we've kind of just said, oh, and my husband was a very passive guy. He used to always, I never wanted him to watch Harry Potter.
Hmm.
Um, and that was a big, and he's an English professor. So, and English lit. And he was like, that's ridiculous, honey. I go, no, I just feel in my spirit, we just shouldn't have it. We shouldn't do it.
Yeah.
And he said, I'll read the books, and then and we'll see if the kids can read. And so he read some of them. And about halfway through, he's like, they're really not that good. And so, it didn't matter to him about the spiritual side
Well,
of it. It was like, yeah, just
well,
like it.
my parents
But we
wouldn't let me.
introduced him to Lord of the Rings. And
Oh,
so
there you
Zachary
go.
is a Lord of the Rings buff.
Hmm.
He's 34. He read all of the books. He loves everything J.R. Tolkien that there is. So in other words, find your children an alternative and
Yeah.
then be strong and go, well, I know you hear it at school, but we're not going to have that in our house. We're not going to play it.
Oh, I
So
remember my parents. I was 12, 13 years old. They wouldn't let me watch the Carol Burnett show
yes,
because of the
I
language.
loved it. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And a couple of times they would sit with me and then explain, well, you
Right.
don't use that word. And I'm like,
Mhm.
Mom and Dad, I hear these words at
And
school
that
all
was
the
before there
time.
were really bad
But
words.
yeah, but I have to give them credit too, is that, when I was listening to Journey and Chicago and all the
Right.
stuff on local radio, they would take me to the Christian bookstore and bought me
Yeah.
my first Imperials album and my first
Yep.
DeGarmo and Key album, my first
Yep.
Amy Grant album, my first Michael W. Smith album back in the 80s. And they were offering me alternatives. And I do feel like parents have gotten lazy. As a grandparent now, I have 5
Yes.
grandkids.
Yeah.
We're of course we're appalled at what's out there. I'll sit
Oh,
down and watch a
and what's
Netflix
out
and
there is even worse than
yeah,
what we.
but so many parents and thankfully my kids are very diligent about what they let their kids see. Um,
Oh, you're
but
at grandpa.
well, I have 5. I have
Oh,
5 grandkids. Yeah.
goodness.
Yeah. Do
Okay.
you have grandchildren yet?
I have two. I've never known them, and that's
Oh.
kind of sad. One's 12, I think, and one is 9.
Uh-huh.
Now my son, he could still have me some grandkids, but he'd have to actually get out of his room.
Well, yeah, let's pray for that.
He's a filmmaker. This was terrible. He was always in his room gaming and all that
Uh-huh.
at grow. Now he's a film editor and he edits people's videos and stuff. So he just lives in the dark, in front of film, editing. So it's like everything I pray he'll get out. When he
Yeah.
goes to college, he's going to get out and meet people. No, he went to college for this stuff and they put him right in a dark studio.
We'll have all of our listeners pray for your son so that you
Yes.
can get grandkids sometime here in the future.
Yes,
That
please
you can
do.
you can
Yeah, I'm
bounce on your
taking
knee. They're the
applications.
best.
He
Oh,
doesn't
yeah.
know it. He doesn't do social media, so I do it
Okay.
for him.
Well, so tell me what's on the horizon for you. Tell me, you're still working. You're still out there
I
doing
am
so
still
much
working.
stuff. Tell me what big's on the horizon for you.
I I tell you what was really great is I just finished building a house.
Hey, congrats.
When COVID hit, there are a lot of things financially. Everybody starts going, what if I don't
Mm-hmm.
go back to work? What am I going to do? So I had to really pare things down, and I couldn't have had a condo. I lived in a penthouse. Woo woo.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a condo and I had some other properties, and I decided just to sell it all and move out to the farm that my husband and I always had, the funny farm. See the funny farm?
Oh,
And
awesome.
so we have cabins out here and we host pastors and the families. We've had a lot of songwriters come out and write, and so they have people that can't afford a vacation. They come to the farm
That's
and
awesome.
loved doing that. But I finally built a house that David and I started just before he died. And it just sat and didn't do it. And so 12, 13 years later, I finally finished it. And we love it. I love it. My son, during COVID, moved back home from LA and he has an apartment over the garage, so he's still editing. But it's kind of nice to have him
Yeah.
close. He had gone out there and drank all that liberal Kool-Aid, so he's coming back a little bit to his conservative roots,
Yeah.
or be able to eat.
That makes for good conversation. That's for sure.
Yeah. If you want to eat today, then you got to talk about, something else. But it is just that's a wonderful thing. But I'm still working. I keep thinking I'm going to retire, and then I always told the Lord, when I run out of something to say, I
Mm,
will never run out of something funny. You know what I mean? Because that's life. But when I run out of something to say, then graciously I want to stay home. And doggone it, if just a nugget doesn't come along and you get excited about sharing it and what the Lord's doing through this teaching in your life. And
mm.
so I do that. I go on all the trips with Governor Huckabee. So I go to
Oh,
Israel
nice.
a lot. And we just got back from the Mediterranean. I went to Ephesus,
Oh,
me
wow.
and Jeff Allen.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Oh, I love
uh,
Jeff.
yeah, I love
He's a
him.
funny dude.
Yeah, and the
Yeah.
tall, long-haired, I can't believe I can't think of his name, and his wife, and I love him very much. And he sang with the Gaither Vocal Band.
Guy Penrod.
Guy Penrod.
Uh-huh.
We all were walking through Ephesus, and the Lord spoke to us in such a monumental way that it stuck with me so much that I think there's a truth in here that women, I really feel strongly need to hear. And so I began to write and then work on the material and all of that. And so that I leave for tour March 1st. And it's a pretty hard and heavy tour. I have a book coming out in May. I have the movie I did that was filmed here in Tennessee called Roll With It. And it was not a Christian movie, but it doesn't have any dirty words. But yeah, but it was filmed here, and it was the first time I've been in a lot of movies, but it's the first time I had the major role. I was in every scene. It was the hardest work I've ever done. But it finally is going to be streaming. It was in the movie theaters for a while, but now it'll be streaming, I think, the end of January
Oh,
on
great.
on
Oh, can't
Prime.
wait to see it.
Prime Video, yeah. But
Yeah.
just the same old, same old. I love it. COVID was interesting. I think for a lot of comics, I had a lot of them out to my farm, and in the barn we have like a little stage and everything. And we
Uh-huh.
decided we would all just tell each other jokes, because nobody was working, and what you're working on. It wound up being just a great therapy session for a lot of comics. But what we discovered is if what you do is what defines you, you're going to be in trouble.
Mm,
You're going to be in big, big trouble.
yeah.
What goes on within you is what needs to
Yeah.
define you.
I think COVID taught all of us that.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that was a good life lesson for me. So when you talk about, what's next for you, there's the business side of it. Yes, I have a book, please buy it, all that, please come buy a ticket, because I need someone to talk to. All those wonderful things. But when you talk about what's next on for me is I want to get better, healthy wise. I want to drink less wine. I want to study more of Paul's journey. There's all those personal things that I never do resolutions because I think it's just sets you up to fail.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
And I don't need that in my life. But I do think about, it's the new year. There's a lot of
Mm,
things we can all work on to be better at who we are,
yeah.
not at what we do. Yeah.
Yeah. I have a friend of mine that's very close to, and he says he calculates how many summers he has left.
Wow.
And and not maybe that he's going to be alive, but that he has the energy to really
Yes.
enjoy. And so we talk about it all the time. Hey, we have 22 summers left. We have
Yeah.
15 summers left. What are we
Right.
going to do? Like
Right.
what should we do next summer? Let's go ahead and start dreaming and plan. And I do
Yeah.
that. I do that too.
Farmers have to do it for what are
Yeah,
they going to plant and when they're going to plant. We should
that's
all
right.
go, okay, next
Hmm.
summer we're going to do this and that. Yeah, that's a
Yeah,
great way of looking at it.
yeah. And so I think if God's got breath in your lungs and light for your eyes, then he's got something for you to say and somewhere for you to go. And man,
Yeah.
I'm excited for you. I can't wait to see, what's ahead for you in the future. And you've been a blessing in my life since I first met you. And then just being
Oh,
able to see, on television and just in concerts around the country. And I hope that we stay in contact, and I would love to just catch up with you again
I
sometime.
do. I do. I would love that too, Andy. You're always a great, integral young man on the road, and it's just a pleasure to spend the day and talk to you.